Hello. You're about to watch a recording of the Marriage Builders Weekend seminar that was made back in 2009. Although we no longer arrange Marriage Builders Weekends, you now have the opportunity to watch it here in its entirety. It's important to note that what you're about to watch is a setup for your marriage to become successful. You're about to learn how to fall in love and stay in love with each other. But keep in mind that it's what you do with that information that matters. Actual change will come later with the follow-up program. For now, let's just make it about learning what is required for your marriage to become successful. So, with learning in mind, be sure to follow along using the How to Fall in Love and Stay in Love workbook. The seminar covers a lot of ground, and the workbook is an essential aid in making sure that you know where you are in the process. You can download a copy through the description below, or visit the marriagebuilders.com website and go to the questionnaire section. Okay, you're all set. Enjoy the seminar.
Well, I'm delighted that you can all be here. We're going to have a long weekend together. I hope I'm able to keep your attention throughout that entire time. There's a lot of material that I want to cover, and we're going to cover it rapidly. There's a lot more things that I could tell you if we had more time, so I'm just going to try to hit some of the most important points and try to make them as clear to you as possible. But we have a follow-up course that goes with this Marriage Builders Weekend, and in that follow-up course, you'll have a chance to look at all of the concepts that I'm going to be describing to you this weekend in detail and in depth, and most importantly, you'll have time to apply it to your lives. One of the things that I state on numerous occasions is that a weekend of marriage building and inspiration can turn out to be a disaster for most couples that don't follow through with what they've been told. The reason for that is that it raises expectations. It makes you think that things are going to get better because you attended a weekend. The truth is that it has very little to do with having come here. If your marriage improves, it will be because of what you do after you leave. In the months and in the years to come, as you change the way you behave, as you change the way you treat each other, as you change your habits so that they become something that will make both of you happy, that will make this Marriage Builders Weekend valuable to all of you. So I want you to remember one thing, and that is that after having attended here, if you do nothing to follow up on this material, it will have been better that you never came. If, on the other hand, this provides a starting point for change in your marriage, where both of you will change, this will be one of the most important weekends you'll have in your life. Years ago, I counseled couples that were having problems in their marriage, and one memorable couple that I saw was Joan and Mike. They were sitting in the waiting room, waiting for their first appointment, and as was my practice, I saw them one at a time. I don't like to see couples together because they tend to criticize each other, and I don't want them to do it in front of each other. I want them to criticize each other, but I want it to be with me so I can understand the problem, and without each of them hearing some very disgraceful and disrespectful things that they have to say about each other. So I see them separately. Joan came into my office, and she told me that she had been referred by a pastor in town who had given up on them, and I was sort of their last resort. But she made some things very clear to me, and that is that she didn't really have any hope in her marriage. As a matter of fact, she told me very clearly that she didn't want the marriage counseling to work. She described to me how her husband either ignored her, belittled her, or yelled at her. Their relationship was an unmitigated disaster, and from the time they were married on, she often wished she was dead. As a matter of fact, upon leaving my office, she told me that if I would encourage them to stay married and would suggest that they continue to come for marriage counseling, she would probably kill herself that week. So, with that as her parting comment, I suggested that I now see Mike and see what he had to say. Well, Mike, as it turns out, didn't feel any better about the marriage. He felt that he was simply able to survive this relationship where his wife would wake up at 10 o'clock in the morning. He would have to feed the children, dress them, get them ready for school, and then get off to work. His wife would have a leisurely morning where at noon she would take a job as a waitress for a couple of hours and then come back home where she would sit and watch TV. When the husband, Mike, would come home, the children would be running wild. He would have to cook dinner for them. And Joan complained constantly about depression, how depressed she was. And she has seen a therapist for the last 5 years for depression. Nothing seemed to help. And so he told his friends and me that he'd made one of the biggest mistakes in his life to have married Joan. He'd married somebody who was crazy. Well, they came in to see me together, and I did tell Joan that I encouraged her to stay married to Mike, but that I would do something that the other counselors that they had seen hadn't been able to succeed in doing, and that is that I would show them how to fall in love and stay in love. I did see them the following week. Joan did not kill herself. And over a period of months, their marriage, in fact, did come together. They did, in fact, fall in love and stay in love. But the day I saw them in my office for the first time, they hated each other. And they hated each other more than they had hated anyone in their lives. Now, many of you here have difficult marriages. Many of you have come to fall out of love. Some of you have actually gotten to a point where you dislike your spouse. There may be a couple here where both spouses hate each other as much as Joan and Mike hated each other. But I'm going to tell you the story of a couple who hated each other and today love each other and have been in love for years, because I counseled this couple back in the 70s. As I go through some of the main concepts that I taught Joan and Mike, I want you to apply them to your life as well. Because if you do, you'll find that you too will fall in love and stay in love, just like Joan and Mike did, but probably under much more favorable circumstances. So if you just bear with me throughout this weekend, I'll teach you what these concepts are, and I'll show you what you have to do to fall in love and stay in love. Marriage is a relationship of extraordinary care. It's a relationship of extraordinary care. Now, that is my central theme in the theory I'm going to present you this weekend. And I'm going to present you a theory of marriage. I'm going to present you a type of marriage. It's a marriage that Joyce and I have had throughout our entire lives. And I didn't understand that it was a theory. I didn't understand that there was a philosophy behind it until I tried to figure out what it would take to save other marriages. I was in love with Joyce, but I didn't know what we were doing that made it work. There was a host of possibilities. And as I would teach couples that I counseled, some of the things that I thought would work in the beginning, it turned out that when they did what I told them to do, they'd get divorced. It is only when I taught them to provide each other with extraordinary care that their marriages were saved. And that simple concept that marriage is a relationship of extraordinary care turned 10 years of failure in my background as a marriage counselor to instant success. Once I was successful in counseling couples, I left my job as a professor, as a teacher, and went into counseling full time because I knew I had something that people needed, and that people needed desperately, and that there were very few others that could do it. But what made me successful was that I understood the role of extraordinary care in making a marriage terrific. Now, that may seem like a no-brainer. It may seem like common sense. It may seem so obvious. But I got to tell you that I went through 10 years of struggling to find out what turns out to be the solution, when all of the professionals were telling me otherwise. The professors, the counselors, the internship I did were not leading me in this direction. They were leading me in a totally different direction. And it is this particular idea that when you're married, you provide each other with care that isn't available any other place. You provide each other the best care, the care that is something that isn't duplicated with anyone else in your life. That concept is so fundamentally powerful that with it, you can understand why your marriage is turning out badly, and with it, you can turn your marriage around and actually have a fabulous marriage. But let me go on to explain. Extraordinary care is something you expect when you're married. Now, again, I tell you that you may look at this and say, this is not an extraordinary insight. When I got married, this is what I expected from my spouse, and I expected to give my spouse. Extraordinary care is sort of a no-brainer. Extraordinary care, though, has to be defined carefully. We have to understand what we mean by extraordinary care, because when you were married, you may have said you're going to care for each other, but you may not have defined it clearly enough for you to have been able to put your wishes into practice. So there are 3 goals that I have come up with that together represent extraordinary care. If these goals are achieved, your marriages will all be terrific. But if you fail to achieve even one of these goals, your marriage will become a nightmare. Now, that's a very important thing for me to point out, because in these 3 goals, we not only define extraordinary care, but if you fail at any one of the goals, you will not be providing extraordinary care. And if you don't provide extraordinary care, your marriage will fail. So let's look at the first goal of marriage, the first expression of extraordinary care. And that is to create a lifestyle that is fulfilling for both of you. A marriage of extraordinary care creates a lifestyle that is fulfilling for both spouses simultaneously. Now, I got to admit that while the extraordinary care idea is a bit common sense-ish, this one isn't. I will spend the very first session, the first part of our evening, talking to you about why lifestyle is such an important issue. The other 2 are a little easier to understand. The second goal of marriage, avoid being each other's source of unhappiness. If you care a lot about each other, you won't hurt each other. And the third goal of marriage is to become each other's greatest source of happiness. Now, it's that third goal of marriage that's actually made me a famous writer, because the first book I wrote was all about how to make each other happy, and that's His Needs, Her Needs. His Needs, Her Needs is a topic that has driven my whole program for years, because it says, if you want to make each other happy, you will meet each other's most important emotional needs. But I have to quickly add that there are 2 other parts to it that get a lot less publicity. You can't be the cause of each other's unhappiness, and you have to create a lifestyle that works well for both of you. Before you learn how to achieve these 3 essential goals, though, I'm going to explain some basic concepts. As you know, I have 10 of them, and I'm going to describe 4 of them right out of the box. The first is the love bank. The second is instincts and habits. The third is the giver and the taker. And the fourth is the 3 states of mind in marriage. When I'm done explaining these 4 basic concepts, we'll start right in with the first goal of marriage, and I will show you how these basic concepts apply to that particular goal. Basic concept number 1, the love bank. We all have a love bank. We all have a love bank. It's inside of us. We're born with it. The love bank keeps track of the way people treat us. Got it? There's an account in your love bank in the name of everyone you encounter. So basically, whenever anybody pops into your life, that person starts an account. And the keeper of the love bank keeps track of that person's deposits and withdrawals. When we associate someone with good feelings, love units are deposited. Basically, when you feel good with somebody, or even just comfortable, you might deposit 2 or 3 love units into that person's account. The keeper of the love bank says this person deserves 3 or 4 love units. If you feel good with the person, 7 or 8 might be deposited. Particularly good, very good, 8 or 9 might be deposited. If you found yourself feeling so good that you'd remember the experience a year later, you might deposit as many as 50 love units. You might remember going out on a date with somebody once where you just had a sensational evening. That particular evening might have accounted for as many as 100 love units all in one evening. So it has to do with how you feel and who's with you at the time. That is the determiner of love bank deposits. Now, you can also withdraw love units. When you associate that person with bad feelings, love units are withdrawn. So if you feel uncomfortable around somebody, might not have been their fault. They just, just happen to have a headache. They're going to lose love units. They might lose only 3 or 4 if you don't feel too bad, but if you feel very bad, they might lose 8 or 9 or 15 or 20. If you feel so bad you can remember it a year from now, they might lose as many as 50 love units, all in one experience. And again, I might remind you that it might not have anything to do with what they're doing. It might just have to do with how bad you're feeling, and that person happens to be there. Anybody that's associated with bad feelings gets love bank withdrawals. Anybody associated with good feelings gets love bank deposits. And the keeper of the love bank is unrelenting in accounting for all the deposits and all the withdrawals with everybody you see, everybody you know, and this goes on and on and on for the rest of your life. Our emotions use the love bank to encourage us to be with someone when his or her love bank balance is high. We want, if you got a high love bank balance, you want to be with that person more often so you can feel good. Because when you've been with that person in the past, you have felt good. So your emotions say, I think this person has something to do with your feeling good, so let's try to get this person into your life more often. Your emotions encourage you to be with the person who has high love bank accounts. And warn us to avoid that person when it's low. So let's suppose someone ends up being associated with some very, very bad feelings that person had nothing to do with, but it actually withdrew so many love units that it puts the love bank into negative territory. Your emotions are going to tell you not to be with that person, even if the person was the one that showed up in the hospital to watch you while you were feeling so bad. The basic idea is here, the association of somebody with very bad feelings is all it takes for your emotions to say, don't have anything to do with that person. Get away from them. The emotions are mindless, irrational, but they have a tremendous motivational effect on who we choose to be with. Well, how did Joan and Mike fall in love? Love bank deposits. Love bank deposits. They discovered what made each other happy. Now, incidentally, when you're dating, that's something I encourage you to do. Most of you, all of you are married here. but I used to run a dating service. And when I had when I had somebody come in who wanted to, learn how to have a good date, I would say the first thing to do on a date is to figure out what makes this person that you've dated happy. Ask a lot of questions about their best experiences, their happiest experiences. And ask a lot of questions about their worst experiences, because what you want to do is you want to learn how to make them happy, and you want to learn how to avoid making them unhappy. So your first date is sort of information gathering, and you should learn a little bit about their background so that you won't find out whether you even want to date that person again. But the point is that if you like this person and you want to date them, you need to have enough information on that date so that you can make sure that that person wants to date you. Well, this is what Joan and Mike did. They never even took my dating class. They knew it already. They were able to make sure that they knew what it took to make the other person happy. And then after they discovered what made each other happy, they learned to make each other happy. They actually did what it took. Joan went to football games in spite of the fact that she didn't really like football. But because Mike liked it and she knew that he wanted to go to football games, by golly, she went to football. And she even watched football on TV with him. And Mike, he went shopping with Joan. Now, Mike didn't like shopping, but because Joan liked shopping, he went with shopping. As a matter of fact, he even suggested shopping. He says, we're going out on a date tonight, but maybe we can stop at the Mall of America and spend a couple of hours there. Would you like to do that? Sure, that'd be great. Love bank deposits. And it wasn't long before they had deposited 1,000 love units in each other's love banks, and they became irresistible to each other. Irresistible. Well, why did Joan and Mike marry? Romantic love. Romantic love. The feeling of incredible attraction when 1,000 love units are deposited. Now, 1,000, for some of you here, it could be 2,000, 3,000, 5,000. For others, it might only be 500. You might find yourself falling in love real quick. Few good experiences, and that's all it takes. But there is a number. There is a threshold where if a person deposits enough love units, you're going to feel something for that person. It's the romantic love threshold. And Joan and Mike exceeded that amount in each other's love banks. After they fell in love, they wanted to spend their lives with each other. That's the way everybody feels. Now, think about it again. Your emotions want this person to be with you when they have high love bank balances, right? Well, if it goes over the romantic love threshold, your emotions want this person to be with you for life. So your emotions are saying, marry her, marry him. Why? Because you're over the romantic love threshold. They thought they would love each other until death. Remember I said the emotions are mindless. Emotions should have known better. I mean, what goes up can come down, right? I mean, just because you happen to have high love bank balances one day doesn't mean you're going to have high love bank balances the next day. But you see, the emotions don't think through that. They think about the fact that this person is over the romantic love threshold, so we want this person for life, so let's get married. And they'd been in love long enough, they figured we're right for each other, we're meant for each other, we're soulmates, we need to get married. Quite honestly, the feeling of love is irrational. But it's an essential ingredient to marriage. You can hardly be happily married without being in love. The things you're supposed to do in marriage can only be done well if you feel love for the other person, if you're in love. And Joan and Mike were in love. They didn't understand exactly how it happened. They just thought it was mystical, magical. They didn't understand anything about the love bank. And so as soon as Mike asked Joan to marry him, bingo, she was there. This is something I want for the rest of my life. Well, with so much love, how did they come to hate each other? It's a very good question. By now you should know the answer. Love bank withdrawals. Love bank withdrawals. Their honeymoon was a disaster. They went to Cancun. Have any of you been to Cancun? You like Cancun? Did you go to the Mayan ruins? Did you like the Mayan ruins? Were you enthusiastic about going to the Mayan ruins? Whose idea was it to go to the Mayan ruins? Put yourself in Joan's place. The morning they woke up, Mike said, "We're going to the Mayan ruins today." Now, he hadn't discussed this with her ahead of time. He said, "I got tickets for the bus, and we're going to be going today." And Joan said, "Well, this is something you could have told me first. I understand that you have to be on a bus for about 2 hours. Was that about how long it was? Did the air conditioning work? No. Joan heard that the air conditioning often didn't work. And if you've ever been to Cancun, it's hot there. And if it is hot, it could also rain. It can do both. And you can be on a bus for 2 hours and then have pouring rain for another 2 hours, and then you get back on the bus for another 2 hours. And Joan heard about these horror stories and said, "Mike, I don't think I want to go. I don't think I want to go." Now, on your honeymoon, did you not want to do anything that your husband wanted to do? No. That would have made their honeymoon work a lot better if Joan had just gotten on the bus. Because all of their dating life, she'd done whatever Mike wanted to do. If Mike has got tickets to Cancun, great. It's better than tickets to the football game. And so she's saying, I'm game, whatever you want to do. So he did what he'd always done. He just went ahead and did things. And she said on this occasion, "No, Mike, I don't really want to go to the Mayan ruins." And do you know what happened? Mike did not accept that answer as a final answer. Now, if he had taken my premarital course in how to negotiate, he would have approached it differently. But instead of being intelligent about the whole issue, he told her that she was going to go, so she better get dressed. You better get dressed because the bus is leaving and they're going to be on it. He made a demand. Joan said, "No, we're not going. I'm staying here. I want to shop. I want to be at the beach. The sun is great. I want to be out in the sun. I want to go do a little swimming. I want to do a little snorkeling. I want to do a little shopping. That's what I want to do on the first day of my honeymoon." Mike made a second mistake. After he made a demand and he found that didn't work, he started explaining why he wanted Joan to go to the Mayan ruins. He said, "You've grown up in a family that is somewhat culturally deprived. You really haven't been able to experience the diversity that there is in various cultures. And if you were to go to the Mayan ruins, I think it would be an eye-opening and enlightening experience for you. You would become a better person if you went with me to the Mayan ruins. As a matter of fact, I consider my marriage to you to be an effort on my part in helping you understand more about what the world is really all about." Well, Joan says, "Look, we both went to college. We're both educated. What in the world could you be talking about? I am as culturally sensitive as you are. The only reason you're telling me that my family is culturally deprived is because you want to go to the Mayan ruins. I'm not going. End of story." Well, that wasn't the end of the story. Mike lost his temper. He lost his temper. He started throwing things around the room, yelling and hollering and telling her that she was just a poor excuse for a human being. And you're thinking to yourself, how could anybody be doing this on a honeymoon? Of course, that's what Joan was thinking. You know, I have married a monster. I have married a crazy person. So she packed up her stuff, got to the airport, flew home. How many love units do you think were withdrawn in that one day? Lots. Now, she didn't divorce him. I have had numerous people tell me that after the first day of their honeymoon, they decided to divorce. Now, in counseling them, they've managed to get their marriage together. But you know, on the first day of a honeymoon, it can be a bad experience for a lot of people. And it was bad enough that Joan was wondering whether she made the right decision, but she went through with it. She went through with this marriage. And what she ended up doing was trying to put up with Mike and his demands and his disrespect and his angry outbursts, because the Mayan ruins issue was only the first of a host of issues where he decided that now that he was her husband, he had the right to tell her what to do. They withdrew so many love units that eventually they had none left. And then they continued withdrawing love units until they were deeply in the red. See, that's the interesting thing about the love bank. Love bank is kind of like an overdrawn, it can be like an overdrawn checking account. In other words, you can still write checks even though there's no money there. But what happens? You get into terrible trouble. Well, this is what happened to Joan and Mike, and the consequences of withdrawing love units when there was no love units to withdraw was that they hated each other. And their account reached minus 1,000 love units. They hated each other. Now, can you remember what I said about emotions? Emotions tell you to be with each other when it is over 1,000 love units. Matter of fact, your emotions are encouraging you to get married. But then when your love units are minus 1,000 love units, your emotions do an about face, 180-degree turn. Your emotions tell you to divorce each other, to get away from each other, to have nothing to do with each other. And that's essentially what happened. And when they came in to see me for counseling, they were well below minus 1,000 love units, well below. And so they wanted to divorce each other. They both did. He wanted to divorce her, she wanted. I hardly ever see people like that. Most of you here, there's one spouse that wants to save the marriage and another spouse that we call the reluctant spouse. The spouse that was brought here. If you're both minus 1,000 love units, you would not have shown up. Joan and Mike wouldn't come to an event like this. One of them had to still be hanging on to the marriage to actually come here. Obviously, if both people are in love, they're not here for another reason. And that is they don't need to be here. There's nothing to learn. They've already figured it out. So generally speaking, what the people in my seminar, I've got one person that is doing relatively well as far as love units are concerned. It's the other person that's dropped out, that has lost a lot of love units. And so it's, in a sense, you've got an anchor there, at least somewhere in this relationship. With Joan and Mike, there was no anchor. There was no anchor. It was only because of their religious beliefs that they were willing to see one more counselor, because they felt that this is what God wanted them to do. And I was happy to help them achieve that objective. But the fact is that when you're at a minus 1,000 love units, you cannot imagine hating another human being more than you hate your own spouse. Now, it's interesting to recognize how that's possible only in marriage. And that is that your emotions are telling you to get away from the person that has a negative love bank account. So if you're working with somebody that you dislike, you simply ignore them, hope that that works. Maybe he won't talk to me in the hall. Or you may choose to move to a different department, or you may get an entirely different job. In other words, that if there's somebody at work that you dislike, there are ways of getting away from this person. If there's a neighbor that you don't like, instead of losing more and more and more and more love units, you can simply decide to not talk to that neighbor, not having to do with that neighbor. And under the worst case, you might actually move to get away from the neighbor. But at work and with a neighbor, the love bank balances don't get as far in the red as they do with spouses because you can get away from them. But with marriage, you can't get away from this person who continues to withdraw love units, withdraw love units, withdraw love units, day in and day out. There is not a bottom to the love bank. There is not a point where it goes thunk. That's as low as it gets. It just keeps right on going. And I've had many people tell me that they feel terrible about this. They just feel awful, but they have daydreams about murdering their spouse. Well, how do you feel? How can you get to that point with any human being? You have to have withdrawn a lot of love units, and that person shows up that afternoon at home and does yet one more thing that withdraws 10 more love units. It just goes on and on. And that was what's happening with Joan and Mike. One of the things I want you to realize about a bad marriage is that a bad marriage is a negative feedback loop. A bad marriage, when one of you is unhappy with a marriage, your emotions are telling you to get out of that relationship, and it makes you an uglier person than you normally are. Being an ugly person, you're withdrawing more love units from your spouse, which makes your spouse an uglier person, which then makes you an even uglier person, which makes your spouse an even uglier person. And by the time you've done this for a while, both of you are demons and monsters. Only when you're with each other. When you're with somebody else, you're delightful to be around. And spouses will often comment to me. They'll say, how can she be so happy when she's on the phone with her friend and then put the phone on the hook and look at me and snarl and call me some kind of a name? How is this possible? Love bank balances. So to review how the love bank influences us, our emotions encourage us to be with somebody when his or her love bank balance is high and warns us to avoid that person when it is low. And that accounts for a lot in marriage.